Welcome to the Love Your Pets podcast, a podcast for pet lovers in Ireland where you get pet tips, news, and interviews. It's educational, it's informative, but most of all, it's fun. Welcome your host, Kate McQuillan.
Welcome, pet lovers, to your weekly episode of the Love Your Pets podcast, brought to you from a very cold Ireland. This week I've lit the fire twice so far, and the heating seems to be on more times than it's off. I've had bed socks on in bed, and the dogs won't even step outside because it's too cold. They're absolutely glued to the sofa. So I don't know if this is it, and this is the weather we're stuck with now till the new year, but it's a bit miserable. But anyway, we've got the show to listen to today. So remember, if you want the show notes in your inbox, go to petsittersisland.com/Love Your Pets podcast, and each week I'll send you the link with the podcast and the notes that go with it. Okay, so let's get this show started. Our weekly fun fact this week is all about animals communicating. And researchers say that animals don't actually have a true language like humans do. However, they do communicate with each other through sounds and gestures. So they actually have a number of inborn qualities that they actually use to signal their feelings. But they're not like the words that we would see in the human language. So that's quite interesting, and it's going to tie in quite nicely with our interview later with Margrit. So make sure you stick around to listen to that. Now, in the Poor Time Press this week, I have a couple of stories for you. The first one is very local to home. So this is in relation to walking your dogs in Clare and Limerick on the border there. And Gardaí have issued a poison alert to dog owners in the southeast of Clare living close to Limerick border after poison was reportedly found in sausage meat along the walking routes. Now, the Gardaí have actually asked owners to exercise caution and keep their dogs on their leads. Obviously, if you've got your dog on the lead and you're watching where they're sniffing, you can see what's actually going on. And it actually believes some of the poison was actually put into the sausage meat, so the dogs weren't able to, help themselves from having a sample of it. It's a very nasty trick. It's not the first time that I've read a story similar to this, but it's heartbreaking to think that somebody would actually go out of their way to do that, and for what. So do be alert. Be alert when you're walking your dog at any time. We've covered this on previous episodes of the podcast, just about how to actually be more alert when you're walking your dog. So do keep them on the lead, make sure you look at what they're sniffing at, and generally just be observant. I'll put the link to the article from the Irish Examiner in the show notes so you can have a read. This story has to be one of those stories where you go, oh my gosh, I thought I'd heard it all. So the title of the story is Son of China's Richest Man Buys 8 iPhone 7s for his dog. So a Malamite dog belonging to Wang Xingong, son of China's richest man, now has 8 iPhones to add to her collection of Apple Watches. I'm not really sure why the dog would need an Apple Watch, let alone why they would need 8 iPhones. Why would any person need 8 iPhones, let alone a dog? There's also posts on this dog's social media showing her wearing a special Fendi handbag adapted for her collar. So it kind of gives you an idea of how spoiled this dog is. Now, we're going beyond treating your dog to lots of toys, new beds, love, affection. These are gifts that are absolutely ridiculous and the dog doesn't need and is never going to use. I'm going to put the link to the Irish Times article in the show notes so that you can read a little bit more about this crazy guy. In our Pause and Pet shout-out this week, we're going to be featuring a dog called Henry. Now remember, if you want your pets to be internet famous, then post a picture of your pet on Twitter or Instagram using the hashtag LoveYourPetsPodcast. Each week then we pick some of the coolest pets from around the world to feature. So if you want to have your dog definitely or your cat on the show, you need to use the hashtag. So as I said, this week we're featuring Henry, and his Instagram account is Henry_Puchon, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. And you will see a gorgeous picture of him with a little bow tie on. It's absolutely adorable. So go ahead, check that out. Now, in the spotlight this week, we have an interview, a fabulous interview, I must say, with Margrit. Margrit Coates is the world's leading animal healer and renowned animal communicator. And I was so excited to chat with her on this interview. It was absolutely amazing. And I could have actually chatted to her for hours. Such a really interesting person, such a great affinity with animals. And it's just really fascinating how she explains to you how animals can communicate with the things that they say, and some hilariously funny stories that she had to share with us. Now, in the show notes, I've put all the links that you can find out more about Margrit and the link to actually go ahead and buy some of her books. We talked about what Margrit does, and then she actually went on to answer some of our questions that were posted in our Love Your Pets Facebook group by some of our followers there. So it's a really exciting interview, and I know you're going to enjoy it.
You're listening to the Love Your Pets podcast, sponsored by Pet Sitters Ireland. Planning a trip or need your dog walking? Then contact Pet Sitters Ireland at www.petsittersireland.com for all your pet care needs.
Okay, I'm delighted to have on the show this week Margrit Coates, the world's leading animal healer and renowned animal communicator. So welcome to the show, Margrit. How are you today?
Yeah, hi, Kate. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show. I'm good, thank you.
You're very welcome. So I suppose if we kick this off by you telling people a little bit about what it is that you do. I know you have the kind of healing side of things, and then you have the communicating side of things.
Yeah, actually the way I work is I do both simultaneously. So for me, you come through to the communication level via a healing connection because they both operate on the same wavelength. And that's what I teach in my workshops, that how people can access that. It becomes much more authentic. In fact, it becomes authentic because there's a lot of communication out there which isn't, which doesn't come from the right place. And so coming through a healing connection becomes much more powerful, and they work simultaneously. And I always think, anyway, the animals deserve that healing connection.
So typically then, how would someone come across you? Would they be looking to use your services because they had a sick animal, or how does someone kind of come across you?
Well, yes, people are constantly contacting me from all around the world. They have behavioural problems, so-called, because a behavioural problem is just an animal trying to communicate something, or they have a sickness, or there's grief, or they may have something changing in the family. I always stress, first of all, that because I'm offering healing as well through the communication, that it is not a magic bullet. I'm not treating specific conditions. I'm working with the whole on a soul-to-soul level. So if somebody says to me, oh, my dog's got arthritis, can you help? I say I'm working soul to soul, healing energy, works with the body of the animal on whatever levels possible. And then with the communication, people often contact me and say, oh, this is happening, that's happening. I'd like to know what my animal's saying, how they feel about this. And then I can help them on that level as well.
And so you do this face to face with the animal. You don't do this kind of via consultation over the phone or anything.
I prefer not to do it over the phone. If I'm not able to work with the animal, for example, I've got clients all around the world, then I do it via Skype, where I can see the animal. So via their laptop or iPad or phone, I can actually see the animal. I just need to see the interaction between the animal and the person, the look in their eye. And I find that, for me, that's a much deeper way of working, more authentic way of working. And I can do it real time then. And also, problems with animals involve the person. So I want to be able to talk to the person while I'm involved with the animal.
And how did you get into this, Margrit? How did this all become about, that this kind of is the path that you've taken?
Oh, well, since I was a child, I've done it naturally without realising that's what I was doing. I've never been taught, I've never been on a training, I've never been on a workshop. It's just always been there. And then as I got more and more involved with animals, particularly with horses, I thought, other people are not listening to them. And I was in a business career until 1996, and I came out of that and then decided, because when I was in my 20s, I took my healer registration so that I am a registered healer with the Healing Trust, the world's largest organisation of spiritual healers. And then when I came out of my business job, I retrained in complementary medicine and then had my own practice. And one of the women asked me if I would help with her horse. And I did, because I have a lot of experience with horses through being involved with them. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should go to the library and get a book just to check what actually happens with healing in animals. And I've discovered there were no books in the world at all on the topic of working with healing energy in animals. So I wrote the world's first books. And then, I've in my books, I've split the topic so that there's a healing books and the communication book. But in reality, I do both simultaneously. So it's one package, it's one energy wavelength, one system. And I listen to animals.
And so if I was bringing my dog to you, how would it work? Would you need to spend some time with him? How does the communication happen?
So if I'm doing face-to-face, I'm visiting someone or they're coming to my clinic, then I would take the case history. I would ask the person on the booking form, I would want to know that they've actually visited a vet for the problem that they feel the animal has. That's really essential, because so many times the animal is communicating pain or illness and the humans misunderstand that. So I need to know a vet check's been made, blood's been taken, the vet's examined the animal to find out that, that those things are not present. A lot of the people who come to me have maybe animals that are not very well, so they're under veterinary care. And then I would take the consultation, write all the notes. Then I would make the healing connection. I would tell the animal that I can hear them, that I love them, because it's really important to love unconditionally as animals love us unconditionally. And then as the healing energy flows, if the animal wishes to communicate, and it's not, it's not a domination thing. And I will say to people, it's like me walking into a room with strange people. I don't march up and say, tell me your story. We engage in a conversation so that animal will say what they wish to say in their time.
And what type of things do they say to you? Like, how quickly can the communication happen?
Well, some animals instantly are very chatty. The images, the sensing what they're thinking and feeling flows very quickly. And sometimes there's a long, long pause. And I never say, oh, you're not saying anything, why aren't you speaking? Because that's just such a human agenda domination thing. I just allow them in their time. And sometimes I say to people, your animal doesn't wish to say anything today, but another day they may, or the animal may only have one thing. For example, yesterday I was with two horses. One of them said very little, and the person looking after them said, oh, I wanted to know about her past. And immediately the horse communicated, the past was so terrible, I don't want to keep reliving it. It's gone. I'm really happy here. I'm happy with the person. I'm happy with the life. It's so different. I don't want to discuss it. And I thought that made a lot of sense. And the other horse immediately was so chatty. And then she said, she pointed down to the woman's left foot. And I saw that area highlighted. When I said she pointed down, energetically, I knew she was drawing me there. And the area was highlighted. She said, please ask her to get that foot looked at because there's a problem. And I said to the woman, what's wrong with your left foot? And she went, well, that's interesting, because in the past few days it's hurting badly. And I said, well, your horse knows, and she would like that looked at. And then I get situations where it might be, for example, I had a dog client where the dog's behaviour had changed since the old dog had passed away. And when I communicated with the dog, a little spaniel, it took some while for him to open up and open up and open up. You know, sometimes you may be waiting 40 minutes for the conversation to begin. So I don't go in with questions. I will say, let's see what the animal wishes to say. And then maybe your questions are answered, or maybe you've been taken onto a different wavelength. And at the end, then if the question hasn't been answered, then I would present a question. So this little dog eventually started to talk. And then he said, I've lost all my purpose in life because the older dog did everything. He looked after the people. He went round the garden. He did all of these things. And all I did was follow him. And now I don't know what to do. I feel lost. I've never practiced playing in these areas or doing these things. He had really dominant personality, the older dog. And we talked through it, the dog and I. And the person said, after that one session, he completely changed. He suddenly found his confidence. He was much happy with people, with other dogs. Everything changed for him because he felt he was depressed because really, in a way, he didn't know who he was because he'd spent 5 years with this older, more confident dog who was in charge, and now he was alone. And I had a cat client who, the cat, a very similar situation after the brother passed away. The cat felt so grief-stricken. She didn't know how to carry on. And so through the healing, through the communication, that all shifted. And sometimes it's about giving people information. For example, a couple brought a dog, and the dog had all sorts of health issues, but nothing, too major. But in the middle of the conversation I was having with the dog said, really, I'm fed up with my people keep talking about my past. Everywhere they go, every people they meet, all they talk about is the past life I had before I came from the animal shelter. And I'm fed up with it. I want to live now. I want to enjoy now. So can you please ask them to just let that go and live in the moment? Because animals want to live in the moment. They're given the opportunity to have a happy life. And so that was a big learning curve for the people to change their mindset. So all sorts of things come up.
But it's amazing that they have the same range of thoughts and feelings that we do,
Well, they do, absolutely. And there's more and more research coming out about this. I mean, now there are scientists calling for animals to be given status as non-human persons. They have exactly the same range of thoughts and emotions and feelings. Obviously, there are variations because they don't have any concept of wanting a better car or new clothes or, more shoes. They don't have any material connection. But what animals are driven by is that this moment should be happy and contented and peaceful. They need a family life. They have all the emotions of motherhood, fatherhood, their friendship. They in the captivity that we have made the situation for animals, we've taken away choice. And humans get cross when animals want to choose something. A dog might be on a walk. I see it so often. And the dog might want to stop. Oh, the dog's dragged off or told off. Well, what happened to choice? We have choice. I see it with horses. Horses are shut inside all day on a beautiful day. The person's off in their shorts and baseball hat and sunshades. Choice is taken away. And then people get cross when the animal tries to have a choice. And so they have thoughts, emotions, feelings. They communicate through images, through words. I was recently teaching in Germany, and I'm off to Holland next week. And people said to me, does it matter the language that the people have? It doesn't matter, because we're communicating on a soul-to-soul wavelength where there's only one language, and that's an instant transmission of information.
And can anybody have this ability to kind of tap into this communication with their pet, or is this something, you know, that you've been given as a gift to use? Like, how would a regular pet owner kind of understand what their pet was thinking?
So I'm fortunate in that I guess, had this gift from a childhood. However, everyone is a human animal. Every single person has the ability to operate on the wavelength that non-human animals have. The only difference between non-human animals and human animals is they do not have a verbal language. They can't open their mouth in any language and say, you're hurting me, I'm suffering, I'm grieving, the music's too loud, there's too much noise, I want to go out. And they cannot take a pen and write it down or tap on a keyboard. Everything else is equal. So everyone can hear what that animal is saying and send messages if they choose to. What I say is I am listening, and what's happened particularly more and more in modern society, people have stopped listening because you're influenced by technology, which means you don't have to listen to anything. So the key is to take a step back and practice listening. A big benefit is joining a meditation class because it helps people to create a space. Use less technology. So I have long periods every day where I'm not involved with technology. I don't have my phone on if I'm walking around the supermarket or out and about. I have it on when there's a need. So it's practicing finding inner stillness and saying to the animals that you can hear them, and then allowing your intuitive level to open up. What we all need to become is a witness to the animal's story. A big block to hearing what animals say is having an agenda. You know, for example, a person's got a horse, and I've seen it. I say, your saddle doesn't fit. No, I asked the horse, it's cost me a lot of money. I asked the horse if the horse likes the saddle, and the horse said yes. And I said to them, that's your agenda. You've already predetermined that. But the horse is telling me your saddle doesn't fit, and that's why he's bucking. Or people, going to a dog or a cat and saying, do you like that food? That's an agenda. The best way is to go fully open and say, I know you're talking, I can hear you, and then allow yourself to hear without questions, without an agenda. Agenda is a huge block to communication, which is why I don't go with a list of questions. I listen to what that animal is saying. There's a big difference.
It's interesting you say that we're not used to listening. That's probably very true.
It is, yeah.
You know, that your first instinct is to ask a question, and when you're asking a question, you're almost leading that conversation then, really, anyway.
Absolutely, that's a really good point you've made there.
Do you know? Now, talking about questions, I do have some questions from our listeners of the show about their pets and how they can communicate and understand them a little bit better. One of the big things that came out of the questions people had was how to understand anxiety in their pets. And I can relate to this. I have 2 pointers, and our youngest, Joey, he's very anxious. He's, when he's about to get fed, he runs in circles. He's always done it since we rescued him. And he does it when he gets kind of like excited or something's happening or he doesn't know what to do or the front door's shut and he can't get out. He just circle. How do you help pets with that anxiety? How can you...
Well, I always, that's a really good question. What I always say to people is, we should avoid trying to put animals into a mould and say, well, that dog doesn't do this and this dog does it, therefore the one that does it has got something wrong. So with your dog, who simply runs around in circles, I would, and the dog didn't look distressed and seemed okay. I would just think it's a quirk of that person. Like, you know, I all around the world I'm traveling, I meet so many different people. My workshops will have 20, 22, 24, 30 individual characters. And as I get to know them over a number of days, they're all very different. Some of them are very open, some of them are anxious, some of them cry a lot, some of them don't. And I enjoy meeting them for who they are and for their development. So, you know, with the behaviour of your dog, that wouldn't bother me too much. I look after several dogs for my friend all the time. There's a pack of them, 4, and she has had 7 at one point. They're all so different. One of them, the minute the doorbell rings, will start circling around the table and hiding and looking anxious. She's just who she is.
Yeah.
So
I think that's more about the owner then than the actual dog.
Yeah. So if undiagnosed pain is a big problem in animals, so that's why I always say to people with any problem, go to your vet, have blood test taken for illness, because thyroid in dogs can cause an anxiety behaviour. Have things checked so that we're not missing a physical cause. But then if it's simply the individual expression of that animal, why it shouldn't bother us. We should just say, oh, you know, that's who he or she is. And the big thing is not to say it. It's not an it. It's not just a cat, a dog, a horse, a rabbit, a bird. It's a he or a she, an individual person.
One of our next questions is about cats and dogs. I don't know, have you ever worked with 2 pets in the same family, a cat and a dog, and how you can get your dog to kind of get on with the cat? I know one of our readers there was talking about how their dog would chase the cat. I know Joey does that with our cat. He's just fascinated by it. Not necessarily to harm him, but how do you get that communication between cats and dogs so that they can live harmoniously together?
It's important to understand inherent species behaviour. So certain types of dogs chase prey, and the cat will be prey, or they want to play. And of course, cats don't think it's very amusing when a dog runs around chasing them. My friend has cats and dogs. Lots of people have cats and dogs, and they get on. It's an individual species thing. So, you know, you can, the way I would work in that situation is just to give healing to both, give healing to the dog, and try and help the dog to feel more at peace without the need to chase. But, you know, if there's a hunting dog, if it's a hunting dog or a prey chaser, you know, I have a friend with Vizslas who are a dog breed who is taken hunting and taken on all of the courses and trials. They're always going to chase something small that moves, and that isn't ever going to change. So it's understanding the behaviour of different types of species and helping them to feel more peaceful, helping them to feel more settled. And also often it is what's in the mind of the person. You know, I've sat in a room once with someone with a dog and a cat that weren't particularly getting on. And then I observed how tense the human became the minute the cat came in the room. And I said, your tension, you're anticipating the dog going for the cat. And she said, oh, yes. And I said, so you're sending a picture in your mind to the dog. The cat's come in the room. You now need to attack the cat. So I worked with that person for quite a long time so that when the cat came in the room, that person showed an image of the cat and the dog lying together, a lot of peace. I had a dog client once whose dog, every time somebody rang the doorbell, would rush to the door, growling and snarling. And the same thing, I said to the woman, the first time it happened, you started anticipating it happening every time. And I watched her, and she was, when the doorbell went, we set up an experiment, she started to breathe in a shallow way. She was stressed and worried about the dog rushing to the door. I gave her a lot of exercises to do, and once she changed her whole energy and her mindset, the dog stopped doing it.
But they do feed off your energy.
Absolutely.
You know, if you don't like somebody, they tend to not like them.
Yeah, absolutely. So animals read our mind. They know everything about us. They read who we are. They feed off us. So it's very important. If we want a certain behavior, we have to say, how are we behaving? What are we sending in terms of instructions? And also, it's scientifically shown that heart vibrations come out of the hands. So if we're anxious, that radiates from us, and the animal goes, oh, why are you anxious? I'm not sure about you. And looks around the room and says, well, you're anxious. What should I be anxious about? Oh, I'll bark, or I'll attack that, or I'll do this. And with horses, with cats. So a lot of so-called animal behavior problems are human problems. Triggering it.
I know one of our listeners was asking about jealousy between, a new pet coming into the home and an existing pet. I suppose that's just the same as kids or humans would be.
Yeah, so it's always remembering that animals read our truth. So if we've got a new pet coming into the home, and it's happened to me, we have to say, okay, how truthful am I being with the older pet? Am I really saying, no, it's okay, everything's all right? But really, in my heart, I'm looking at the new one going, all right, you cute, you're so young, you're so nice. Because we can't fake it. So we have to transmit this unconditional love to the older animal and say, keep a conversation going. You're so wonderful. You're in charge here. You're so beautiful. I love you so much, and feel it. Help me to incorporate this new person into the family, into the home. And the same with, babies coming in, is to treat the original animal as you would a valued member of your own human family, instead of just sidelining them. And that's what happens so often. People radiate huge amounts of love to the baby or to the new animal, and then they talk to the older one and go, no, you're still okay, no, it's okay. But then it's like a dampening down, a shutter comes down on the love they're transmitting. So there again, it's just, how would we feel? We suddenly are in a family situation or friend situation, someone new comes in, and everybody suddenly is all around them. Aren't you marvelous? Aren't you wonderful? We feel sad, hurt, and not wanted.
Yeah.
So always act like we want to be treated.
Well, our last question is all about depression in animals. And this is particularly a question about a cat. Every month, this cat gets particularly depressed and starts to lose its fur, be very quiet and subdued. Now, they overcome this within the week or 2 weeks, but it's a bit of a cycle. How could somebody deal with that?
Okay, so I would very definitely look at, I'd say keep a diary. Write down if there's a repetitive situation that's depressing the cat. But certainly I would want some blood tests done. I would want to know how old the cat is, because in my experience it's very common, cats over 7, and my vet verifies this, become affected by pain. So this idea that older cats sleep a lot is now going out of the window, because the vets are realising that older cats sleep a lot because they're hurting. And it's been undiagnosed. People have just said, oh, no, they're asleep, but they're actually shutting down. So I'd want a really good cat vet to look up, and that's why I use a vet who only does cats. Then pulling out fur is a sign, or can be a sign, of pain. So that's why I would really want this cat to be looked at very, very carefully.
But the animals, I presume, suffer the same range of emotions that we do, depression, happiness.
So they can become depressed. I work with a lot of animals who are grieving, who are depressed for one reason or another. I remember, something that still touches my heart when I was teaching in New York. I went to the Humane Society. I do pro bono work for charities. And they took me to a dog who was 11, a large dog, a sort of collie cross German shepherd. And he'd been there 6 weeks. His person had taken him from the Humane Society when he was a puppy, and now become homeless, lost his job. And he'd driven a long way across America back to the same Humane Society where he got him from to hand him over. And this dog was so deeply depressed. And as I was working with him and channeling healing energy, I heard him say, "It's been a very long day." And I thought that was so poignant that he wrapped up 6 weeks in that phrase. And when I mentioned it to the staff, of course, we all, teared up. And I could feel the passion of his grief, of his loss. And inside, he was sobbing. Animals cry. They may not, tears may not run down their face, and they may not have a box of tissues, but they cry. I've worked with Anne the elephant at Longleat, and the first time I touched her, tears ran down her face. I've seen horses cry. I've seen dogs and cats cry. They feel the same emotions, and anybody who says they don't has either no empathy or has never been involved with animals. You get scientists study lab animals to look at emotions. Well, how nonsensical is that? Lab animals are not living a normal life. You need to get amongst them to be with them. And it's the reason why I don't eat meat, and I haven't done for most of my life, because the animals in factory farms have thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And the first law of physics is everything's energy. The second law is you can't destroy energy, only transform it from one type to another. So taking in the flesh of animals that have suffered is in our body. And for me, that's not something I want.
Well, if you're communicating with them, you can see why you wouldn't,
Yeah, exactly. Why would I want one on my plate?
It's fascinating. It really is, like that you can actually communicate and hear what these animals are saying, and you're having the same kind of conversation with them that you are now with me. I find it. I mean, I truly believe my dog understands everything I say.
He does.
I always have done. And I love chatting to them. They're great listeners. But to think that they can actually process all that information and potentially talk back to me is just incredible.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
I was with animals can have a sense of humour, and often they make me laugh. And this thing where they know everything about us, I have had some clients book me and then cancel at the last minute because they were worried about what the animal was going to say, which... But anyway, I was with yes, the secrets. And I was with a horse once, and the horse showed me the person with a red jewel. And I saw this coming through the horse's eyes, and I said to the person, what does this mean to you? I'm seeing you holding a red jewel. And she sort of gasped and didn't say anything for a few minutes. And she said, oh, it's a ruby ring. It's my grandmother's, and my grandmother has promised all her jewellery to my mother. But when I was visiting one day, she gave me the ring, and I've kept it secret from my mother. She doesn't know I've got it. Well, the upshot was she went and confessed to her mother and said, "Oh, my horse knows I've got this ring, so I want you to know," which I thought was really funny. And I've had that with, dogs and cats in the middle of the conversation. They've shown me something or said something, and I have to tactfully, I'm looking at the person thinking, what are you showing me and what's going on? And I've had to sort of tactfully present it to the person. So sometimes it can be very, very funny. I was with a dog once, and he showed me the person with piles and piles of chocolates and sweets. And I said, why am I seeing this? And her husband was sitting there, and she said, I don't know. It's nothing to do with me. And then he left the room to go and make a cup of coffee or something. And she said, I wish the dog hadn't said that, because I'm on a diet. I'm diabetic. I'm not allowed sweets and chocolates, but I have a secret stash.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
So it was very funny. And then her husband came back in the room, and we talked about something else. So she said, I better give up now that my dog knows.
Being called out by your dog. That's brilliant.
Yes. I love it. Very funny.
Well, it's been fantastic chatting to you. I really appreciate you coming on. I know our listeners are absolutely going to love this. Where can people find out more about you and possibly get your book if they wanted to?
Well, there are 6 books, and they're all on Amazon, or you can order them from any good bookstore. So the book about communicating is called Communicating with Animals, How to Tune Into Them Intuitively. I wrote it as a complete guidebook, so everybody can take this book. You can get it on Kindle as well. Read it, and it's a full guide to how people can open up their intuition, explains how it works, it gives stories. So reading this, the reason I did it was to inspire people to say, this is you. You are a communicator. You are a healer. There's a healing book as well. This is you. You have this ability. We're all humans who have the ability to interact with animals, soul to soul, heart to heart, mind to mind. You can do this, and the animals need you to.
Cool. Well, I'll put all the links to the books and the websites in the show notes for everybody, so that people come on. And I'm definitely going to get a copy of that book and start communicating with my 2 dogs and find out what secrets they know about me.
Oh, yes, that's very funny. Yes, good.
I really appreciate your time. Like I say, people are absolutely going to love this show. They really are. It's just so fascinating. And thanks again for coming on, Margrit.
Well, thank you so much.
You're listening to the Love Your Pets podcast, sponsored by Pet Sitters Ireland.